So, with talents, if you guys are playing on live, you probably only have, if I recall correctly, these two trees open. Now with these two trees, I typically run Fell Mastery and Demonic Appetite, but for instructional purposes of this video, I will go through every single talent. Fell Mastery, passive, increases Fell Rush damage by 50% and grants 25 Fury when Fell Rush damages at least one target. This is clearly the best option in my opinion. It allows your Fell Rush to do even more damage, which if you just so happen to go through somebody, it's great that you generate Fury off of it and you deal damage with it. With these other two, Chaos Cleave, Chaos Strike hits an additional target for 50% damage. I could see this being a viable option if you're going for that very cleave heavy AoE damage kind of composition. Maybe if you're teamed up with a warrior, just so you could hit multiple people. However, it only dealing 50% damage to a nearby target, I don't think that's that great. I see this talent primarily being used for PvE. Up next, we got Blind Fury. Increase the duration of I-Beam by 50%. I don't see this being good either. Pretty much every single melee, if they're ever on you, will kick I-Beam. It seems to be reactionary for them, even though I-Beam doesn't tend to do that much crazy damage, like, oh shit, I gotta kick I-Beam, otherwise I'm gonna die. That doesn't really happen. The duration of I-Beam being, you know, increased or buffed by 50%, I don't see that being very viable either because, well, I-Beam isn't that crazy. Up next in the 100 level talent tier, we have Prepared. Reduces the cooldown of Vengeful Retreat by 10 seconds and generates 40 Fury over 5 seconds if you damage at least one enemy with Vengeful Retreat. I don't see this being viable. Vengeful Retreat doesn't really have a spot in a proper rotation. On top of that, if you Vengeful Retreat, you tend to get away from your target. So even if you were trying to damage people over there and you Vengeful Retreated away, you're gonna have to use a Fell Rush to get back to your target. So I feel like you're wasting a lot of time and you have a lot of downtime with all the flashy movement and you're not actually doing a lot of DPS. But I mean, you generate 40 Fury, not good. Next up, we've got Demon's Blade, replaces Demon's Bite. Now, there's a bit of controversy around this talent as well. Your auto attacks have a 75% chance to deal additional shadow damage and generate Fury. With this talent, if you spec into it, with Demon's Blade, you do generate Fury off auto attacks. However, it's based off of RNG. I mean, 75% chance. It is a little bit high. However, I think it makes the class 2 passive in play for my personal style. You could probably get away with using this. I'd have to see the DPS reports to give you a complete and honest, review of the ability. However, I think that the playstyle is too passive and kind of makes Demon Hunter play a little bit boring if you spec into Demon Blades. So that's why I picked Demonic Appetite. Chaos Strike has a chance to spawn a lesser Soul Fragment, and consuming any Soul Fragment grants 30 Fury. Pretty much so, whenever you do Chaos Strike, little fragments pops up. I'm pretty sure it gets drawn to you immediately, and you just generate more Fury. In the level 102 talent tier, we've got Fellblade. 15-yard range, 15-second cooldown. Charge to your target and deal 102k fire damage. Demon's Bite has a chance to reset the cooldown of Fellblade. Now, I haven't done too much experimenting with this. Fellblade was my initial choice of talent when I first started playing Demon Hunter. It's a very cool spell. It's just an additional mobility spell, so I mean, it's like another charge, right? You charge to your target and you deal a good amount of damage. It only has a 15-second cooldown, so it just makes Demon Hunter even more mobile, which is pretty badass. However, a lot of reports and testing has shown that First Blood just deals a shitload of damage. It reduces the Fury cost of Blade Dance by 20 and increases its damage to 150k against the first target struck. So this talent really buffs up Blade Dance and makes it worth fitting into your primary rotation. Bloodlet, just not really a good ability. Throw Glaive causes the target to bleed for 200% of the damage inflicted over 10 seconds. If this effect is reapplied, any remaining damage will be added to the new Bloodlet. It just isn't that great. I can maybe see it being used for like PvE, if you're trying to AoE people a lot. There's an AoE fight, maybe this would be better, but for PvP, doesn't deal that much damage, not worth it. Up next, 104 tier, we've got Netherwalk, replaces Blur. Instant, 1.5 minute cooldown, slip into the Nether, increasing movement speed by 100% and becoming immune to damage, but unable to attack last 5 seconds. I mean, this is an interesting spell. It pretty much buffs Blur in a sense. gives it a longer cooldown. You take no damage for 5 seconds. I think Netherwalk could be used in Arena. It's better oh shit button than Blur, because Blur only reduces damage taken by 35%, and it only gives you a 50% dodge rate on, spells when you're being targeted, or attacks when you're being targeted. Which 50% dodge, that's not all that much. Like, I see myself getting hit by kidney shots, all kind of shit when I'm blurred. So I don't think the dodge mechanic of that's that great. However, when you go Netherwalk, you give up on these other two talents, which, I mean, this one's not good. This also replaces Blur, and it gives you a passive where you automatically trigger Blur when you fall below 35% health. It can only occur every 30 seconds. So it's pretty much like when you're already like about to die at 35% health, then it pops Blur for you, and it can proc every 30 seconds. I don't think that's that great. I'm just not a passive player like that. I don't like having abilities that are used for me. In the third choice, we've got Soul Rending, gain 100% leech while Metamorphosis is active. Now, this is typically what I do spec into. I want to test Netherwalk more in Structured Arena when ladders do come out, in case Demon Hunters are just very tunnelable. They just take damage and they can't seem to survive a lot. I think Netherwalk might be better than Blur because it allows you to get away while your healer's in CC and take no damage. I mean, you could Netherwalk all kinds of burst, and it'd be very useful. I believe you can still get stunned while you're Netherwalked, but I mean, if you Netherwalk before like an initial kidney versus an RMD and you just prevent all that damage, I think that'd be huge, because if you just Blur before that, then you only take 35% less damage. And I think the increased cooldown of 30 seconds, well, that's not that bad of a trade-off. However, the leech you gain from Metamorphosis is important if you do spec into this later talent, Awaken the Demon Within. Basically what this does is when you reach 50% health, you go into Metamorphosis. So even if your Metamorphosis isn't on cooldown, when you hit 50% health, you go into Demon form, and you get all this leech from Soul Rending, allowing you to heal yourself up a bit. So that's also a cool mechanic to look out for. However, I don't know which of these two is better right now. I think this is probably a little bit cooler to play with, since it makes you immune to all damage for 5 seconds. But then again, you can't attack for 5 seconds. In the next tier, 106 level, we've got Momentum. Fell Rush and Vengeful Retreat increase your damage done by 20% for 4 seconds. Fell Eruption, 20-yard range, 35-second cooldown, impales the target for 250k chaos damage, and stuns them for 2 seconds. Inflicts an additional 100% damage against targets permanently immune to stuns. This spell is interesting. It's good. It deals a lot of damage. It could be useful if Demon Hunter sustain is very, very low. I know I've had a bit of an issue with sustaining some proper DPS outside of my burst cooldowns with a Demon Hunter. So I could see this spell, kind of adding to the damage we put out, and it's not a bad stun. However, I'm afraid of it DRing with my teammates. 2 seconds is a relatively very low stun to put on somebody. If you're playing with anybody with a stun, this is pretty much just going to be a 1 second or maybe even like a 0.5 second stun. It's going to be very DR'd, maybe not that great. In the third choice, we've got Nemesis, 50-yard range, 2-minute cooldown, increases damage you inflict against the target by 20% for 1 minute. When the target is slain, you will inflict 20% additional damage against all creature types, matching the original target for the remaining duration. This spell adds to the sustain, just flat out 20% more damage on that target for 1 minute. So with this ability, you kind of want to make sure you're training the target that you put Nemesis on for 1 minute, or you at least get your money's worth out of it, per se. It's a good talent. I typically do spec into this, put it on the guy at the start of the arena, and hit him, whack him in the face for a while, and I'll deal more damage to him. The other choice, Momentum, it allows you to be more swippy swappy on the Demon Hunter. However, I don't think using Fell Rush to get like a 20% damage buff is worth it. Like I said, I think reserving Fell Rush, getting to a target or getting away from a target is the best usage of it. Up next, we've got the level 108 talent tier, Master of the Glaive. Throw Glaive now has 2 charges and snares all enemies hit by 50% for 6 seconds. Unleashed Power removes the fury cost of Chaos Nova and reduces cooldown by 33%. Demon Reborn, invoking Metamorphosis, also resets the cooldowns of Eye Beam, Chaos Nova, and Blur. This choice right here with Demon Reborn, we can just cross this out. Not very good. Gives you a random assortment of cooldowns that it is resetting. Don't see this being optimal. With the other two choices, a lot of people go Unleashed Power. It removes the Fury cost of Chaos Nova, our main stun, and reduces its cooldown by 33%. So it lowers the cooldown quite a bit. It has no Fury cost, so you could use it initially. You could use it when you have no Fury. You can use it whenever you want. However, Master of the Glaive, a talent that literally gives the Demon Hunter class a snare. Despite Demon Hunters having so much mobility, if your target's not snared, you're really not going to be able to hit him all that much. And unless your teammate is on top of the game, on top of his game, and he's got him snared 24/7, you're not going to be on your target all that much, because majority of classes right now have some sort of movement speed buff. They've got some sort of distancer, they've got something to kite you. So I typically always gravitate to Master of the Glaive, because I can't play a melee class without using a snare. And I can't imagine not having a snare on a melee class. It's unheard of, kind of, you know what I mean? Up next, we've got the level 110 talent tier, Chaos Blades. Instant 2-minute cooldown. Increases all damage done by 20% based on mastery for 12 seconds. While active, your auto attacks deal 200% increased damage and cause chaos damage. So with this spell, we have another huge damage steroid going into our burst. Chaos Blade, it's pretty much just, it buffs your damage insanely. Up next, we got Fell Barrage. I tested this out yesterday. I did a few games with it. It's got a 30-yard range, 30-second recharge. At your command, unleash Fell, inflicting 60k chaos damage to your target and nearby enemies for each charge. Max 5 charges. Damaging attacks have a chance to generate a charge. I'm not sure how often they actually recharge. I don't know if the recharge rate is good off of abilities. It takes 30 seconds to even recharge one. It does help you sustain DPS, so it kind of aids in that battle. However, I feel like if Demon Hunters aren't going to have good sustain, which they don't right now, I don't think like one talent choice is really going to buff it all that much. Maybe if you go into some sort of sustained DPS spec, I could see it maybe being viable. Maybe if you go like Fell Blade, Fell Eruption, Fell Barrage, that's pretty much going to be more so of a sustained DPS spec, whereas Chaos Blades, First Blood, Master of the Glaive, that's going to be more of like a bursty talent spec. So it's something to play around with. I'm sure I will play with it a bit, test it out some more, but for right now, I feel like Demon Hunters, their potential comes through their burst in Arena. So really trying to give people every 2 minutes, or burst somebody down every 2 minutes. That seems to be the go-to. The last choice is Demonic. I-Beam and causes you to enter demon form for 5 seconds after it finishes dealing damage. I mean, this is okay, but the other two choices are honestly just better. Going into demon form for 5 seconds after an I-Beam, it's good, but it's not as good as these in comparison. So that about wraps up the primary talents for you guys. Up next, we're going to go into the honor talents. The first two tiers, relatively cookie cutter choices. We've got Gladiator's Medallion. If you're familiar with the game, this is just the PvP trinket, gets you out of any loss of control effects on your character. I personally will never pick these other two talents, I don't think. Maybe Relentless if I'm on like a Warlock or something, but I think Melee having a trinket, maybe Rogues could get away with it, but Melee having a trinket is just so important in my opinion. I think these other two choices, it makes your play more passive, and I'm just not a passive playstyle kind of guy. I want to be in complete control of my character, even if the PvP trinket is on a 2-minute cooldown, but that gives me at least control every 2 minutes if I'm locked up, In the second tier, we've got Reinforced Armor, Hardiness, and Sparring. Reinforced Armor and Health increased by 10%. This is like basically what you choose most of the time. Sparring can be chosen if you go up against a melee-heavy composition in Arena. Physical melee attacks have a 20% chance to be blunted, dealing 50% reduced damage. So I could see this being a choice against like Warrior Windwalker, maybe like Warrior Rogue, Warrior DK even. This could be good. However, most of the time you want to pick Reinforced Armor. Hardiness, while above 80% health, you take 20% less damage. I mean, it's okay. I don't think there's enough validation behind this choice to make it a good choice over these other two. So In the next tier, we've got Solitude. Increases your damage by 15% and attack speed by 15% when there are no allies within 15 yards. So if you're playing like Demon Hunter Mage or Demon Hunter Shadow Priest, this could be good for dealing even more damage. It'd probably give you more sustain and help you out in that battle. However, these other two options, well, not really Glimpse. You automatically gain Blur for 1.5 seconds after you use Vengeful Retreat. I don't think that's that great. The third talent choice, Cover of Darkness, increases the chance for you and your allies to avoid damage while within your darkness effect by 50%. So this pretty much buffs your ultimate defensive wall darkness to grant you a 70% chance to avoid all damage from an attack. Now, I mean, if you've got a 70% chance to avoid all damage from an attack, this is basically going to save you and a teammate or whoever else is in this 8-yard radius from taking damage for 8 seconds. Like 70%, that's pretty high. You're not going to take any damage when you're inside of that. I think Cover of Darkness is the best choice unless you're very, very confident in your healer and you're playing Demon Hunter Mage healer or Demon Hunter caster healer. Solitude will probably buff your DPS pretty well. In the fourth tier, we've got Unending Hatred. Anytime you're a victim to a magical effect, you gain 5 Fury. Reverse Magic dispels all harmful magical effects from yourself and all nearby allies within 10 yards and sends them back to their original caster. And Eye of Lithoris, a 40-yard range, 45-second cooldown. You keep a watchful eye over the enemy. Whenever they cast a harmful spell, they suffer 5% of their health in shadow damage and refresh the duration of Eye of Lithoris. Last 6 seconds. It's typically between these two that I choose. They both have very sweet mechanics, honestly. Eye of Lithoris deals a ton of damage, and Reverse Magic, I mean, this is a sweet mechanic. It pretty much dispels any magical spells on you and sends them back to the caster. And if you're like next to a healer and your healer is sheeped, you can use Reverse Magic and break your healer out of that sheep, as well as sheep the mage. So Reverse Magic has very cool mechanics tied to it. It's got massive amounts of potential, but Eye of Lithoris does deal more damage. So it's a bit of a trade-off. It's like, you know, do you want to have more utility for your team, or do you want to deal more damage for your team? It's kind of up to you. Typically pick Reverse Magic because I like being more safe and being able to use an ability that can break, you know, a teammate out of CC as well as CC the enemy. Reverse Magic also gets you out of roots. So if you're in a Frost Nova and your healer's, you know, in Africa, or you're in Africa and you want to get out of your Nova, you can use Reverse Magic and, you know, get back on your target. In the fifth tier, we've got Awaken the Demon Within. If you reach 50% health, you automatically gain Metamorphosis for 8 seconds. This effect has a 1-minute cooldown. In addition, the duration of Metamorphosis will be refreshed up to a maximum of 8 seconds while at or below 20% health. So this is a very cool spell because it pretty much just throws you into Metamorphosis, and when paired with Soul Rending, will give you Leech at 50% health in demon form. So not only are you able to deal even more damage at 50% health because you're in demon form, you also have the potential to heal yourself if you go into that Leech talent spec. Then we've got Rushing Vault. Using Vengeful Retreat grants a charge of Fell Rush. I mean, once again, I addressed it earlier. I don't think using Vengeful Retreat ever to deal damage or snare somebody, or to, in this case, gain a charge of Fell Rush is optimal. I think it creates too much downtime and puts a halt into your DPS. The third choice is Pinning Glare. I-Beam reduces the target's movement speed by 70% for 4 seconds. This just is dull in comparison to these two. Having a snare on your I-Beam doesn't do much, in my opinion, especially because once you get out of the I-Beam, you can just get to your target with Fell Rush. You don't really need a snare on it. In the last tier, we've got a bunch of cool choices. Detainment. Imprison can now be used on humanoids and beasts, and targets become immune to damage and healing while imprisoned. So like I addressed earlier, your Imprison with this talent choice, when paired together, can CC a target for 3 seconds, I believe. They don't give you a timer on the tooltip. I'm not sure why. But it does put Imprison on a 1-minute cooldown, and it CCs the target for 3 or 4 seconds. They're not able to do anything. It's basically like a mini cyclone. So a very good utility spell to have on a Demon Hunter. Rain from the Above. You fly into the air out of harm's way. While floating, you gain access to Fell Lance, allowing you to deal damage to enemies below. This is a very, very cool spell. It pretty much launches you 50 yards into the air. You turn into Illidan, and you launch meteors at your target, and they deal about 160 to 170k damage every 1.5 seconds. So not only can you get away from melee very easily with this ability, you can also deal a pretty good amount of damage, sustain DPS on your target while you're just floating down to safety. Most good teams will know what to do in this situation. You can sheep the target out of air. However, if you're going up against a mage, why even take Rain from the Above? If you're going up against maybe Warrior Rogue, if you ever see yourself going up against Warrior Rogue, Rain from the Above is probably the best talent choice here. Or maybe Warrior Windwalker, Windwalker DK, but then again, DKs can just grip you down from the air. So although this ability is very cool, can get you, fly you up to safety for a bit, there's a lot of ways to counter it, so that's something you've got to be careful about. The third choice is going to be Mana Break. 1.5 minute cooldown, deals 41k chaos damage, plus an additional 1% of the target's total health in chaos damage per 2% of the target's missing mana. Now, I tried this ability out a few times. It does work very, very well if the target has about 40% mana. It deals a huge chunk of damage. However, it seems to be that most classes don't really have issues with mana. Mages can run a little bit low sometimes. Resto Shamans, if the game goes long enough. Resto Druids almost never. Warlocks occasionally. So the primary issue I find with this talent choice is that, well, as its tooltip says, it depends on the target's missing mana. So it's kind of hard to say, when this is going to be good against caster cleaves, because it depends on their mana usage. And if the game doesn't allow for most casters to go or relatively short on mana at all, this ability isn't going to deal much damage most of the time. So it's a toss-up. It's a safe choice to take this. When you're going up against like a mage and a warlock, it will deal damage. However, how much is dependent upon, obviously, the target's missing mana. Detainment is a good choice almost all the time. These other two, very situational. Yeah, I think that just about covers everything in terms of the abilities, talents, and honor talent choices of the Demon Hunter class. I really hope you guys did enjoy this video. I will be making a separate video for proper DPS rotation, burst, as well as rank 1 viable compositions, and just general compositions that you can run on a Demon Hunter in a 3v3 at level 110 come Legion's release. So make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can get notified when that video comes out, and just get notified when all my new videos come out, because I plan on releasing a lot of content for you guys come these next few weeks and going into Legion. Once again, hope you guys really enjoyed this video. The burst DPS rotation as well as composition video will come out probably in a few days, so make sure you keep your eyes peeled for that one. Apart from that, hope you guys found this video to be of use. It may be on the little bit of the long side, we'll see, but yeah, just hope you guys really enjoyed this video, found it useful, and I will see you guys in the next stream. Sony D out. Later, guys.